G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, review of the year time. So not review of the week. We will have that back this coming Monday. You know, I've let kind of the news stories build up so we can have a big one this coming Monday. But I figured, I talked about doing this before, to have a look at the year in boxing, which was 2022. Now it has to be said, lads, there wasn't much happening this year. You know, it was a kind of, in terms of the last few years, it wasn't one of the better years in boxing. I think that's fair to say. Now, we did get off to a pretty decent start in the new year, obviously going into 2022 from 2021. January was a little bit slow, but at the end of January, we did end up getting Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams. And that was a fight that I myself was quite looking forward to. Correct me if I'm wrong here. But wasn't that fight originally due to take place either late December or early 2022, as in like one of the first weeks in January? For some reason it got pushed back. It got pushed back until the very last week in January. We had that fight and it was a decent fight. You know, that's the last time Eubank Jr. has been in the ring. He's been out of the ring nearly a year. That was how we started the year, certainly on this end of the pond. And for me, it wasn't a bad fight at all. You know, Liam Williams had his moments in there, but he was dropped several times. Chris Eubank Jr., he looked good without looking truly devastating. So that was how the year started. You know, we obviously had Eddie Hearn and DAZN. They were starting to get their shows up. I believe they started running their shows kind of more so in February. And obviously February was a big month. February was a big month because it was kind of then we were really starting to hear about Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury. Because you remember at the time going into the new year, we were hearing a lot about, no, Dillian Whyte is going to fight Tyson Fury. Then we were hearing, no, he's not. The WBC are going to allow a step-aside fight and we're going to have Fury versus Usyk. Joshua was going to step aside. We were hearing so much about all these fights going on that, put it like this, for us here who make videos, it was good times. I mean, early 2022 for me, it was good times because there was never anything to not talk about. There was so much happening that was going on. Rumour about this, rumour about that, fights happening here, fights happening there. There was a lot to talk about. I think the main talking point from February was, again, a Sky show, which was Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall. Now, we're going to get the rematch likely in March of this year. So both guys would have been out of the ring a year. But I think to go back and to watch that fight, and I remember watching it live, I actually done a watch along for that fight. It was a bizarre one. It really was, because it was such a clear cut, we knew who won this fight. And Josh Taylor got the decision. It was just mental. And I don't remember seeing a robbery, certainly, and I don't use the word robbery a lot, but I don't remember seeing a robbery as bad for a long, long time. And, you know, I would say the nearest thing that would have came close to it was Zach Parker when he fought Darryl Williamson, which was way back in 2018, I think it was. That was bad, but I thought Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall was worse. I mean, the fact was that you had Ian John Lewis. I think he gave it to Josh Taylor by quite a big margin as well. He had to step down from judging and from refereeing. So he was a star referee. Now he's refereeing. I think he's refereeing the kind of the pros, but they're unlicensed pros, kind of like white collar, Queensberry League and stuff like that. That's how bad it was. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible decision. And obviously February as well, we had that was actually the end of February, because the week before that, because I was looking at days thinking, when did that happen in February? Because I have my other phone with me. That was the end of February, because the next night we had Lawrence Okoli versus Seslak on DAZN. That was when DAZN were toying with the idea of doing more of these Sunday shows, which I personally really enjoyed. Now, the Seslak Okoli fight wasn't great. You got to remember that wasn't a great fight at all. It certainly wasn't. But I think the concept of doing them Sunday shows, the Sky have toyed with the idea of doing it. They done Adam Mazim, which I'll talk about later. I'll talk about him in a bit more depth later on. And from the looks of things, it didn't do spectacularly in the Ali Pali. It looked like, there was more empty seats than there was full seats. I think the Sunday idea is a good idea. Maybe Friday would be a better day to do it, but I think it has a bit of potential if it can be done right. And obviously the big fight that we thought about, or we were all talking about in February just gone of this year, was obviously Kell Brook and Amir Khan. Little did we know, I suspected it might have been one of their last fights. And what I mean by that is it might have been Kell Brook or Amir Khan's last fight. I didn't think it would be both their last fights. Remember the build-up, a very entertaining gloves are off. That's what I will say. That was one of the more entertaining gloves are off I've seen. You had Amir Khan, even in that gloves are off, just getting under Kell Brook's skin. It was comical. And look, I picked bad going into that fight. I think a lot of us we read a lot into the Terence Crawford fight. And I guess at the end of the day, and this is not me making an excuse, but at the end of the day, you're only as good as your last performance. And Amir Khan, although his last performance going into the Kell Brook fight was July of 2019, where he fought Billy Dibb. And shout out to Billy Dibb, by the way. He's going through a pretty bad ordeal now at the minute. God bless him. He's struggling with cancer now at the minute, so God bless him. I hope he comes through it. Him and his family, I hope they're keeping well, and I hope he comes out the other side. Thoughts and prayers are with him. But he fought him in 2019, and Billy Dibb is a career super featherweight, and that was up at 147 pounds. So Amir Khan obviously was going to look pretty decent in that. And that was a weird show over there in Saudi. Remember that show? It had Prince Patel versus, I can't remember the guy's name, Miguel Banquez. And Patel got absolutely battered by him. And then you had Hughie Fury facing, the human statue that is Sam Peter, which is what he looked like in that fight. And somehow Hughie Fury made hard work of it. Amazing. It was a real bizarre show. It was on Channel 5, actually, I remember that. I was thinking, this is so bizarre, it's actually good. It was one of them weird shows where it was so strange, it actually became a good show. I quite enjoyed that show, truth be told. It was a couple of years ago now. Jesus, time flies. But Kell Brook's last performance going into the Amir Khan fight was against Crawford, where he was stopped by kind of a jab/hook. He looked terrible on the scales. I just felt that Kell Brook was on the decline. We hear stories about Kell Brook not living the cleanest lifestyle outside the ring. I'm not just talking about ballooning and weight, I'm talking about other things. And, a lot of stories about Kell Brook I've heard. Many, many, many stories about him. Many. And none of them good. So, bearing all that in mind, I was thinking, well, Amir Khan probably has a bit more left in the tank. He didn't. And Kell Brook went in there, beat the crap out of Amir Khan, truth be told. The fight had a rematch because I paid for it. No, it was on pay-per-view. I paid for it, and no regrets. Truth be told, I wanted to see it. It was past its sell-by date, but nevertheless, we still got a chance to... We can never say what if. We can still say what if it happened in 2014-15. I still think Kell Brook would have won, but I think it would have been a more competitive fight. I thought we'd see multiple knockdowns, truth be told. We didn't see any. But it was the fight that the box has now been well and truly ticked. Obviously went into March then. And I know I'm mainly talking about the UK because that's kind of mainly where the bulk of the shows kind of were that we were watching. Obviously we had a lot in the US that was kind of happening more towards the summer. Was it May? I think it was May when Tank Davis fought Rolando Romero, Rolly as we call him. We're going to try and do this as chronologically well as we can, talk through the months. Let's go into March then. And March was an interesting one. So obviously in March, I think it was April when, because I'm doing this based off memory, so if I'm off by a little bit, just, I'm trying to do this. It's not as easy when you don't have anything with you. I think in March we obviously had Warrington versus Martinez. Martinez, amazingly, in 2022 came in as champion, having surprisingly isn't even the word, knocked out Kid Galahad with one shot the previous November. It was just such a strange one. It was the strangest kind of fight you'd ever see. But he came in as champion. Josh Warrington had fought Kiko Martinez prior in his career, and he actually had a very hard fight with him. That was way back in 2017. Some people felt that actually Martinez in that fight was unlucky not to get the decision. Now in this fight, Josh Warrington, reckless again with his head. Very reckless. but was able to stop Kiko Martinez, reclaimed his lost title, and was able to move it on. It was around about this time we also got the announcement that actually Alexander Usyk would be facing Anthony Joshua. We hadn't got an exact date yet. Now, also with Anthony Joshua, the previous few months at the end of 2021, he'd been over in the States. He'd been training with Virgil Hunter. He'd been training with Ronnie Shields. He'd been training with, I think he was training with Freddie Roach, Eddie Reynoso, etc. So we were kind of seeing what he was doing. He actually announced that Angel Fernandez would be his trainer, which I think kind of was one of the biggest anticlimaxes we'd heard, because we were like, well, he was already in your team and he was acting as co-trainer anyway to McCracken, so what was the point in that? But we were waiting for the announcement for him and Usyk. We did get the announcement that Tyson Fury would fight Dillian Whyte in Wembley Stadium, went to a purse bid. Queensbury, amazingly, won the purse bid, which really was amazing because you think about it like that. The money they put up for that fight was crazy. So they won the purse bid, so they were going to stage a BT Sport pay-per-view, Fury versus Whyte. Whyte didn't show up at any of the press conferences. He didn't really do any build-up for this fight at all. It was really strange, it was really bizarre. But in March, in my opinion, and it just is my opinion, we also had the fight of the year, in my opinion, for 2022, which was Leigh Wood versus Michael Conlan. A fight that pretty much had everything. I believe it was the very end of March. It literally had everything. And it also had for me, there have been many good knockouts this year, but I just think Leigh Wood, Michael Conlan did it for me for knockout of the year. The end of the 12th round, well, the 12th round, I think it was actually the start of the 12th round, but Leigh Wood was behind, he needed to rally, and he knocked Conlan out of the ring with one shot. For me, that's the knockout of the year, in my opinion. I don't know, watch along for that fight, and my jaw just dropped when I seen that happen. Because Leigh Wood was down very heavy in the first round. I mean, it was a very heavy, dangerous knockdown as well, because he actually whacked his head off the canvas when he went down. So it was a very, very heavy, dangerous knockdown for Leigh Wood. I was surprised. And actually, if you look at that fight, if you go back and watch it, you look at the second round, there was moments there where that referee was having a good look at Leigh Wood. There was moments, I can't remember, was it Howard Foster who was refereeing that? But there was moments where he was having a serious look at Leigh Wood. He was having a serious look at him in there. So for him to go from that to rally, to drop Conlan in the 11th and to take him out in the 12th, it was the fight of the year in my opinion, because it had you on the edge of your seat the whole way through. You just knew. That was one of those fights where even though Conlan was winning and he was the better of the two. You could tell that he was the better fighter. But you always felt that drama was just around the corner in that fight. It wasn't a clear cut as, okay, Conlan's going to seize it. You just knew something's going to happen. Don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. And that's the way it was. Then we go into April. Conor Benn had his much anticipated, well, it wasn't really much anticipated, was it? It was a foregone conclusion against Chris Van Heerden. So we've seen that. And we also got two big fights in April. We would get Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte, followed a week later by Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano over there in New York. Now, the undercard for the Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte fight, it was like going for dinner at a Scottish restaurant. Nothing interesting and nothing you want. But the main event was like the only thing on the menu that had a bit of flavour and had a bit of excitement. That was really it. They didn't even really try with that undercard. There was no trying to make it out to be anything it wasn't. It was just what it was. It was the Fury Whyte show. Now, one of my worst picks, probably not the worst, I think I've had worse. I'll have to look and do a video of my worst picks. But one of them was picking Dillian Whyte to beat Tyson Fury. People still give out to me about that. Yes, I've done it. I've picked him. I got it wrong. Yes. Dillian Whyte got knocked out in the 6th round. It was one-sided. Also in April, we saw Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas. Now, I remember going into that fight. And that was a unification fight. I remember going into that fight thinking, this could go, like, I'm picking Spence, but this could be, don't rule out Ugas. Now, Ugas, he had his moment where he really did stun Spence. Stunned him bad. And for some reason, he just didn't step on the gas. It was really strange. He didn't step on the gas, because I think realistically, he stunned Spence. It might have been in the 4th or 5th round. And I think that if he'd stepped on the gas, he could have at least got a knockdown. He didn't. Spence went on to win the fight Tremendous performance. I mean, at the end of the day, Spence still can't be right after the car crash. He still can't be 100%. So the fact that he's able to go in there and beat guys like Danny Garcia more convincing than Keith Thurman and Sean Porter beat them, as well as beating Yordenis Ugas more convincingly than people like Sean Porter have beaten him, it really shows how talented Spence really is. I mean, this is a very, very talented fighter. Make no mistake about it. It's just so disappointing that he's had these issues with the drinking, the blowing up in between fights, the car crashes, etc. Because you look at him and you just think, like, what level could you be at if you'd lived a cleaner life? You know, it's not like you're Adrian Broner or anything like that, where you're just like, what the hell? But you know what I mean. So that was Errol Spence. Obviously, Katie Taylor fought Amanda Serrano very last week in the month of April. The month of April was a busy enough one. Now, I have to say, what in God's name, and I still don't understand why they did this. Why the Zone had Jessica McCaskill commentate on the Katie Taylor fight and expected her to be objective. I mean, what? Like, she does not like Katie Taylor at all. And of course, she didn't give Katie Taylor any credit in that fight. And I was like, why would you get, like, of all the people, yeah, like, Eddie Hearn should have known better. Because it's like, she does not like Katie Taylor. She's not going to be objective. And she wasn't. And of course, you're going to have people say, well, listen to what Jessica McCaskill said. It was a great fight. Katie Taylor won it. I didn't think she would, truth be told. I was picking Amanda Serrano going into that fight. We may very well get the rematch in Croke Park this year, which I think could be brilliant. I mean, honestly, Croke Park, yes, I want to see it. We need a big event. We need a big boxing event like that here in Ireland. Could you do Croke Park? Probably could, because in Ireland, Katie Taylor is a big name. But people ask me this, right? Could she do Croke Park? Croke Park's an 80,000 seater. Could you do it? I'd say yes, probably could. Because even people who don't watch boxing in Ireland watch and love Katie Taylor. So they'd come from all over the country just to see it. Even if they're not boxing fans, and many of them wouldn't be, because Katie Taylor, they all love her over here, they'd all come. So she probably would. Like, it would be, oh man, like, Croke Park would be like 90% Irish fans. It would literally be 90% Irish fans singing ole, ole, ole. That's what it would be like. It would be some atmosphere. It'd be good atmosphere. And I think it'd be a great little lift. I really do. I think it would help boxing something amazing in Ireland. But that was the month of April. I'm pretty sure it was May where Tank Davis fought Rolando Ramirez. Very strange fight. I thought Tank Davis would batter him. I mean, like, originally the fight was meant to happen in December. It didn't happen for obvious reasons. And then they rescheduled it, and I was like, he's going to batter Roly. And Roly was actually amazingly outboxing Tank for large parts in that fight, until obviously he ended up getting clipped and then was taken out. In the month of May, the big talking point, and I've seen some people say this is the upset of the year. No, not for me. I mean, when you look at, I'm talking about Canelo Bivol, when you look at Bivol, he'd all the talent there. He'd all the attributes to beat Alvarez. So when people say, like, that's my upset of the year, no, it's not my upset of the year, far from it. The reason why I didn't pick him to beat Canelo is because, for several reasons. One, I thought that they'd never give him a fair shake on the scorecards, especially considering where he was from. You know, we've seen people like that absolute scumbag, that spawn of Satan, Mauricio Sullivan, you know, banned fighters from that country, amongst other farcical things he's announced recently for the WBC. So I thought that for political reasons, they just wouldn't give it to him. And try as hard as they did in that fight, they still gave it to, thank God, they gave it to Dimitri Bivol. And he won the fight. It looked to me as though there was levels to burn for Bivol in that fight. It really was a spectacular performance. It really, truly was. And obviously Canelo, he had planned to fight Triple G in September regardless. So we knew that fight was going to happen. Alright, we knew it. And obviously it was around about this time, kind of May, April time, which is when we saw the emergence of a certain Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Now, for those who kind of follow the lower weight division, we would have seen Bam Rodriguez at 108 pounds. He looked very good. But he actually moved up because obviously at this time, I think it was also back in March, we saw Chocolatito. He fought, I think he was originally meant to fight Estrada in the trilogy fight, which he did end up fighting him in. But because Quadras had to pull out, it wasn't Quadras, it was Estrada. I mean, names mixed up there. Because Quadras fought on the undercard. He ended up fighting Martinez instead. And of course, the ageless warrior, Chocolatito Gonzalez, the legend that he is, beat Martinez. And on the undercard, we had Carlos Quadras, going in there against Bam Rodriguez. Seen better days, Carlos Quadras, yes. Bam Rodriguez moved up 2 weight divisions, which then put him in place to fight Trezeguet who he fought him in June. I believe it was June anyway. And he looked just... Again, Trezeguet I think he probably has seen better days. But still. I mean, you were seeing a very, very, very talented fighter coming out. And obviously as well, in the month of June, we saw Joe Smith Jr. He came out, he fought Artur Beterbiev, and Joe Smith Jr. tried to put it on Artur Beterbiev. And how did that work? Well, it didn't work well at all. Got knocked out in 2 rounds. Yes, he did. But Beterbiev, again, showing that he is relentless. He is vicious. And also in the month of May, I'm going back between May and June here, so sorry about that, but it's all coming to me. I'm talking about it. But in the month of May, we saw one of the most farcical shows I've ever seen, in one of the most bizarre looking rings I've ever seen, which was pay-per-view over in America, which again was farcical, which was having an alleged world title fight, which again was laughable, which was Daniel Dubois versus Trevor Bryan. No disrespect to Dubois, it was a Don King show. It looked every bit a Don King show. Trevor Bryan, I mean, some people were saying, you know, after Deontay Wilder, is Trevor Bryan kind of a good thing? It's like, no. Big Baby Anderson is a good thing. Trevor Bryan just looks meh. And he didn't look amazing a couple of years ago when he was lighter. Now he really doesn't look good. You know, like against BJ Flores a couple of years ago when he was about 50 pounds lighter. He still didn't look amazing, but he looked better than he did now. I mean, now he just looks just like, yeah. So we had that. That was kind of May and June. Then we go into July. And when we go into July, this is when they get the announcement. It might have actually been in June, that Anthony Joshua would be teaming up. As well as having Angel Fernandez, he'd also have Robert Garcia, which to me was an interesting one because it wasn't the trainer I really initially thought of that Joshua would have in his team. I kind of thought it would be, you know, it'd be different. I just didn't see him being Anthony Joshua's trainer. And in the month of July, with the zone shows, we obviously saw the return of War Chisora. Del Boy, he actually had a rematch with Kubrat Pulev. Now, I remember when that fight was announced, I was kind of I wasn't looking forward to it particularly. I really wasn't, because I kind of thought the first one wasn't great and this one won't be. It was better because they were both shot to pieces. It was better. Chisora got his win. He did get his win. And also that month as well, there was a lot of talk about Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce happening in July, the first week in July. And I remember getting tickets, flying over, and getting my first ever press pass, because obviously the fight didn't happen because Parker ended up signing with Boxer. At the same time, they were announcing Hughie Fury versus Michael Hunter for July as well. So I was thinking, okay, this is shaped up to be a good month. We didn't get Hughie Fury versus Michael Hunter in the end. They pushed it back to October, never happened anyway. But they announced that, okay, we're going to see Joe Joyce versus Christian Hammer. I was at the Wembley Arena, and it was probably, for me, the highlight of my year was being at the press conference for those fights, or for that fight particularly. It was just, it's one of them experiences that I can't describe how good it was. It was like everything that you'd done over the last 3 years had just kind of, here you were at these press, free of charge, press row on fight night, and it was just amazing. It was an amazing experience. Hopefully, long may there be more. Hopefully, there will be one coming up in the month of January for the Yard Beterbiev fight. Hopefully, that happens. Long may the success on this channel continue. I'll talk more about that at the end. But that happened as well in the month of July. Other than that, it was from what I can remember, it wasn't really a majorly busy month. I think Charlo. Oh, and before missing things here, in the month of May we also saw George Kambosos versus Devin Haney. Devin Haney became undisputed, and we also saw, I think it might have even been in July, Charlo become undisputed against Brian Castano. I'm pretty sure that was in July as well. So we were seeing undisputed title fights happening across the pond. Obviously, Kambosos Haney happened in Australia. It was actually announced they'd be having a rematch as well. There was a rematch clause. At the time, I was like, really? Really? Because it was so one-sided in Haney's favour the first time. But they announced the rematch. We also saw in the late June the return of Jarrell Big Farmer Miller. He's had 3 fights since then, by the way. 3 fights since then Big Farmer's had. So, and again, he is still big, and I would say, although officially there's been no failed you-know-whats, I'd be amazed if he's not juiced up to the you-know-what. I mean, Big Farmer living up to his name. I'd say if he actually did pee in a cup, the cup would probably disintegrate because there's that much goddamn stuff in his you-know-what. Crazy. But that was kind of the month of the summer. That was kind of how the summer was going. Then, of course, we go into the month of August. Now, the month of August was literally, it was going to be mainly about Joshua Usyk. Because Joshua Usyk 2, the rematch, was going to happen in Saudi Arabia. It was going to happen at the end of August. And for me, the month of August was just building up to the rematch. The month of August was just building up to the Alexander Usyk AJ rematch. There was a lot of hype. There was a lot of people going over. It was really seen as the last step to Undisputed. You know, Fury had done his thing. He was toying with the idea of having a comeback fight. We were hearing about Deontay Wilder getting ready to make his comeback. But this was really the fight that we were all interested in. We were all wanting to see. When we had the fight on fight night, it gave us... Well, Usyk beat Joshua again. Not as clear as the first one, but still schooled him. You know, AJ had more moments of success in it, but it was an Usyk fight. He pulled away late on. Really impressive in the 10th round after having a really hard 9th round. He was able to go and get the win. And AJ, well, is there any other word you'd use other than a mental breakdown in the ring? I can't see it being anything else other than that. That's what it looked like. It was bizarre. It was bizarre, you know. The whole, it's not nice. That turned, he literally turned himself into a meme with that. It was bizarre. But obviously he came out after and said, and look, I'm surprised. I said it once, I'll say it again. I was surprised it didn't happen sooner. Truth be told, I really was. I was surprised it didn't happen sooner. A week after the fight, we had Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz. So there was plenty of heavyweight fights going on. That fight turned out to be better than I thought. And Ortiz actually fought Charles Martin very early in January of 2022 and had a very good win over Charles Martin, in which he was down several times. I don't know how Charles Martin lost that fight. I really don't. But this kind of time, August, September, it was kind of... It was a bit slow for boxing. There was shows going on, and actually it looked like it'd be a slow month, but we had some good fights, and believe me, I was having an absolute horrible time, probably the worst time of my life outside of here. So the boxing that was happening was getting me through with something. It was really helping your boy out. It was helping your boy massively. So Natasha Jonas fought on Liam Smith's undercard, which also I believe was on the 3rd. Liam Smith fought a very bizarre fight against, was it Wakino on Sky Sports? A very bizarre fight. And that was Liam Smith it was his return. And when Liam Smith went from, because obviously he'd fought on the Zone, he'd fought Jesse Vargas, I believe, in April on the Zone, left the Zone to go to Sky. And obviously the talk was Eubank versus Smith. That's what we all thought was going to happen. But somehow, around about that time, they announced that Eubank Jr. wouldn't be fighting Liam Smith. In fact, actually, he'd be fighting Conor Benn on October the 8th. Which again, just kind of blew my mind. Because I was thinking, huh? That's a strange fight. That's a very strange fight. Why the hell is that fight happening? We got the build-up for that. Week after Liam Smith fought Wakino, we had Canelo Triple G3. I have to say, right, when it was talked about first, I was kind of getting up for it a bit. But the longer we went into it, it was like, it just didn't appeal. And the fight itself was just a real meh. You know, you watched it and you just went, meh. You know, Triple G had fought Murata in March, fought him over in Japan, and he looked rough at the start, but he got through. It looked devastating. Again, it was just a real meh. That's what it was. It was just kind of one of them fights where it's like, Okay, moving swiftly on. You know, that sort of way, it's like, right, it happened, and next. That's kind of how it was. So the landscape was changing, and just to interject, go back a bit. Obviously, in June we had one of the saddest fights I'll ever see. Not because it was a bad fight, but because Nonita Donaire got stopped by Inoue in 2 rounds, and yeah, that wasn't nice. That wasn't nice to see. You know me, I like Nonita Donaire very much, and yeah, that wasn't. It was a great knockout, but it wasn't nice to see. It wasn't nice to see. It wasn't nice to see. But then obviously in September, we obviously knew as well we'd be getting Joseph Parker. Now, Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce, which I was really looking forward to. It was to clash with Lee Wood versus Mauricio Lara on the same date, September 24th. I was like, really? Do we have to? Like, why? Now, Wood pulled out, but the show didn't get pinned. So it would go ahead with Kid Galahad versus Maxi Hughes. Now, I'm going to be frank, not that no one cared about it, but it was going up against a much better fight, a much better card in my opinion, which was Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce. Joe Parker fought one of the dumbest fights of his career, and he also weighed in stupidly heavy. And of course, what happened? Well, he got taken out in clinical fashion by Joe Joyce, who he literally couldn't have played into Joe Joyce's strengths anymore. In terms of the Maxi Hughes fight, Maxi Hughes, a guy who was working full time a couple of years ago, really looking one foot out the door in boxing, gave it one last go, trained with Sean O'Hagan, and look at him now. You know, could potentially get a world title fight next year. He doesn't have to work anymore. He is living the dream. And credit to him, I like seeing guys, I don't like seeing them go up the hard way, especially when they have talent, but sometimes that's the only way they can come up. You know, Maxi Hughes is a guy, he had to work and plug and chip away to be able to show his talent, and now he's able to show it. Yeah, he's got a couple of L's, but that doesn't define him as a fighter. I mean, you look at Maxi Hughes now, and you see a brilliant fighter. Who gives a you-know-what if he has a couple of losses? That is not the same Maxi Hughes of then that we have now. It's not. So massive shout out to Maxi Hughes every single time. We kind of look forward to Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. because the more we got to it, the closer we got. I kind of look forward to it. What happened next? Well, Conor Benn with his old... Well, I was going to make a joke there about he clearly didn't study biology because apparently he was taking... No, he failed the drugs test. And he's still harping on and proclaiming his innocence, saying the WBC need to hurry up with their investigation. Mate, you sent an absolute massive amount of documents, right, proclaiming your innocence. I mean, what was it, something like 200 pages? Yeah, you really think they're going to be able to do that just like that? And you're just, again, I'm innocent. Oh, well, you must be innocent despite the fact you failed 2 drug tests. But hey, who's counting? Who's saying anything? Conor Benn. Brilliant. Genius. Tremendous guy. Anyway, fight got binned. Eubank was kind of Eubank came out of it looking like the face. You know, he came out of it with, you know, a lot more fanfare than he did going into it. And then it was a case of, right, he's got to get out. Because that was the kind of thing. They wanted to get him out as quick as they could, which they did. They got him, well, they're getting him out in January against Liam Smith. The fight that I kind of thought would happen before Conor Benn. We'll wait and see what the story is with Conor Benn in the new year with regards to UCAD, the WBC. The WBC issue really, I don't think that plays much impact in Conor Benn, to be honest with you, because, well, the WBC can ban you, but the WBA, WBO, IBF, like, you can still fight for them if they haven't banned you, so we'll wait and see what happens. There's the UCAD one is the interesting one. That's the real interesting one. But obviously October was a quieter month. It was a quieter month. It was kind of the calm before the storm, because November was shaped to be a bit of a busier month. So in November, we obviously got Denzel Bentley versus Yalabek, which Denzel Bentley, he impressed the hell out of me. He really, truly did. He impressed the absolute hell out of me. We obviously had John Ryder versus Zach Parker. John Ryder actually kicked off Matchroom shows in February. He actually had a show, headlined a show against Danny Jacobs at the Alexandra Palace. And that was a decent enough little fight. But I felt that John Ryder, he was a fighter due some luck in his career, and I felt he got some against Danny Jacobs, because I felt Danny Jacobs just nicked that fight. But John Ryder, credit to him, got the decision, and he was well on his way to beating Zach Parker before Zach Parker pulled out in the 4th round. That same night, we also had Dillian White versus Jermaine Franklin. Again, I looked at Franklin and I saw decent hand speed, to be fair, but not much else really. But he showed me a lot more in that ring, and Dillian White didn't. And I looked at that and I thought, okay, Dillian White, he is there for the taking. He is literally there for the taking from someone. Obviously on the Sunday, Adam Mazim headlined against Ryland Charlton. Now again, that wasn't really... Adam Mazim has looked amazing, he's looked devastating, he's looked fast. So I'm all for seeing what he does in the new year. I really am. I can't wait to see what he does in the new year. I think it's going to be fantastic. You know, he looks the package. Charlton, no disrespect around Charlton, but I think he's realistically English level, fair to say, just below British level. So we're getting a good idea of where Adam Mazim is. So that was the Sky shows. Obviously Wilder, I think I've already said it, but he made his comeback in October. In October we also had the Haney-Kambosos rematch, Devin Haney winning it pretty clearly, to be fair. So the year was kind of coming to an end. We're kind of getting to where we are now. We're into the month of December. We had a farcical, shameless money grab. And that's what it was. The Tyson Fury fanboys in their infinite wisdom will defend it. The teeth. Great. Yeah, he put Tyson Fury Chisora 3 on pay-per-view, UK record price, absolute mismatch. It was a farce, that's what it was. Let's not make any joke about it. The Fury fanboys will just, you know what they're like. You know, they have the intelligence of an absolute farm animal. They really do. They'll defend it, but it was inexcusable in my opinion. How can you claim to be a people's champion when you go and do that? That was a shameful money grab by Fury and Frank Warren. And of course, it's Frank Warren, what do you expect? But in that month as well, we also had Josh Warrington versus Luis Alberto Lopez, which was a mandatory defense for Josh Warrington. It was a very tough mandatory defense, which is something we don't see too often these days. And we actually saw a bit of poetic justice. We saw the right guy, in my opinion, get the nod, get the decision, and get to sail off into the sunset. And I think that was that was in December the 10th. Obviously, Chris Billum-Smith, he obviously had 2 fights on Boxer and Sky in 2022, one in the summer, which was in August against Isaac Chamberlain, which was a great fight, brilliant fight. And then obviously he had that big knockout win only about a week or so ago. So the year ended like that. That's where we are now in the year. That's pretty much the year in a nutshell. I hope I have it all. Hope I haven't missed much. But going into 2023, I think boxing, you know, it doesn't have a big... It's not following much, if you know what I mean. It doesn't have a hard act to follow in 2022. But I truly believe it won't just beat 2022. It will trump it. I 100% believe next year is going to be a brilliant year for boxing. It's going to grow. We're going to see some big fights. I think we're going to see some upsets. I really do. I think we're going to see some big upsets. I think it's going to be a fantastic year for the sport of boxing. I think we're going to see Undisputed. I think we're going to see upsets. I think it's going to be fantastic. I will put it like that. I think it's going to be a great year next year. And I hope it is. I hope I'm right. Because when boxing flourishes, you know, obviously all of us here on YouTube, our channels do well. You know, obviously I'm this close to 10k, which I really want to hit. I can't wait to hit 10k. I really can't wait. And, you know, I've got a lot of plans next year. Well, next year is only a few days away. But I've got a lot of plans coming because there's a lot I want to do on YouTube and outside YouTube, and you know, I 100% believe we're going to get there. I have a lot of little goals I have now for the channel, which, you know, you don't tell your goals, you don't tell people your goals, but I've got a lot to think about now going into the new year with all this. So I leave you with that. That's the review of the year. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. What were some of your favourite moments of the year? I know it's been a long one. What were some of your favourite moments of 2022? Leave it in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already, if you're first time watching. I'll leave you with that, people. Peace.